Snow swallowed her footsteps almost as fast as she made them. It was past midnight, the kind of mountain midnight where even the moon seemed afraid to shine. The wind cut through the trees like knives, slicing at her thin dress, tearing at her hair, dragging heat from her body until the only warmth she had left was the blood dripping slowly from her arm. She had been walking at first, fast, desperate, stumbling, but now she was crawling, hands sinking into the drifts, knees scraping against ice that numbed everything it touched. Her name, she couldn't even remember the sound of it anymore. All she heard echoing in her head were the last words she'd heard back at the cabin she'd escaped. "Run all you want. We'll drag you back." She didn't look behind her. She didn't dare. The forest felt alive, listening, watching her struggle. Branches creaked above her like warnings. Somewhere far below the ridge, a wolf howled, long, low, mournful. Even the animals knew she wouldn't last much longer. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each one colder than the last. Her fingers no longer hurt, they were past hurting. They felt swollen, stiff, heavy, as if the snow had already claimed them. Her vision blurred at the edges, tunneling into darkness every few seconds before snapping back. She didn't know how many miles she had traveled. Only that she had to keep going until her body refused to move. She collapsed forward again, her cheek hitting the snow. The cold stung her skin at first, then nothing. No pain. No heat. Just silence. She lay there, fingers twitching weakly, her breath forming faint clouds that drifted upward and disappeared. "This is far enough," she whispered, though her lips barely moved. The words didn't feel like a decision. They felt like surrender. She stared ahead at the endless white, feeling the weight in her chest loosen, the weight she had carried for too many years. Maybe dying out here wasn't tragedy. Maybe it was mercy. A quiet ending in a quiet place. Better than being dragged back. Better than hands on her throat. Better than the door locking behind her again. Snowflakes landed softly on her eyelashes. She didn't blink them away. Her mind drifted to warmer memories, sun coming through a kitchen window, the smell of fresh bread, laughter around a table she hadn't sat at in years. A life she once believed she would grow into. A life stolen from her slowly, piece by piece. She exhaled a shaky breath. Her eyes began to close. Then, crunch. A footstep. Heavy. Deliberate. Close. Her pulse fluttered, weak but wild. The sound came again, closer this time, snow packing under a boot. Her heart stumbled. They'd found her. They'd finally caught up. She tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out, sinking into the snow. The footsteps stopped beside her. Silence. Then a shadow fell across her face, blocking the moon. A warm hand, warm, impossibly warm, touched her cheek, brushing away the frost. The touch wasn't rough. Not demanding. It was slow, gentle, steady. A deep voice broke the night. "Hey, don't you close your eyes." She forced her lashes apart, and saw him. A man, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a fur-lined coat, snow dusted across his hair and beard. His eyes, cold steel blue, burned with something fierce the moment they met hers. "You hear me," he said, leaning closer. "Stay with me." But her body was already slipping away. Her lips parted. A whisper escaped. "Please, don't let them find me." Something hardened in his face. A quiet, dangerous promise formed in his expression. "They won't," he said. "Not while I'm here." Her vision darkened. She felt herself lifted, strong arms closing around her, pulling her against a warm chest as the world faded. And just before she lost consciousness, she heard the last thing she expected. "You're safe now." Warmth hit her in scattered fragments, like distant memories trying to return. First, the crackle of fire. Then the heavy scent of pine wood burning. Then the soft thud of boots moving across wooden floors. She opened her eyes for a second, but the world blurred into shapes she couldn't name. The man who carried her didn't slow down. He shifted her carefully in his arms and ducked into a small cabin lit by a single oil lamp. The air inside was warm. Too warm after the cold she had almost died in. Her skin prickled painfully as heat seeped back into her limbs. She whimpered without meaning to. "I know," the man murmured. "It's going to hurt a bit. Stay with me." He laid her on a bed near the fire, an old but sturdy one, patched wool blanket stacked thick on top. She felt the softness under her cheek, something she hadn't felt in what felt like years. Her eyelids fluttered, but everything was too heavy, too blurred. Her fingers twitched. She tried to pull the blanket over herself, but her arms were too weak. The man noticed. Without a word, he lifted the blanket gently and tucked it around her shoulders like someone who remembered how to take care of things that felt broken. He knelt beside the bed, studying her face with a seriousness that made her heart twist. Not pity. Not curiosity. Something else, something steadier. Your lips are blue, he muttered under his breath. Frostbite just starting, you're lucky I found you when I did. Lucky. She almost laughed at the word. There was nothing lucky about her. Nothing blessed. Nothing safe. Her entire life had collapsed into one long string of moments she wished she could erase. Her voice cracked when she finally managed to whisper, where am I? High Ridge, he answered. My land. My cabin. Miles from anyone. He hesitated, then added softly, you're safe here. Safe. She tried to hold on to that word, but fear pressed against her lungs, refusing to let it stay. You shouldn't have, she whispered, eyes shutting again. They'll come. They always come. His jaw tightened. He reached for a metal basin of warm water he had set near the fire. Steam curled from it as he wrung out a cloth and brought it to her forehead, brushing gently across her skin. No one's coming through that storm, he said calmly. And even if they did, they won't get past me. There was no bravado in his tone. No threat. Just truth spoken quietly, like a man stating the weather. She forced her eyes open again, trying to focus on him through the haze. His face was sharp-edged from years of hardship, beard rough, hair tied back loosely. He looked like someone who lived alone not because he wanted to, but because the world had taken too much from him. What's your name? She whispered. He paused. Just a second. As if the question carried a weight he hadn't expected. Rowan, he said. Rowan Hale. Her lips trembled. She stopped. Her name, her real name, felt dangerous now. Like something that could be used against her if spoken aloud. Rowan noticed her hesitation, and instead of pushing, he nodded once, slow and understanding. You can tell me when you're ready, he said. Or not at all. Either way, you stay here tonight. Rest. Warm up. That's all that matters. Her throat tightened. She felt tears forming, hot, unwanted, humiliating. She turned her face away, but Rowan reached out and pulled the blanket higher around her shoulders, his touch light as breath. You're shaking, he murmured. Your body's trying to wake back up. Let it. The fire roared in the hearth, painting the walls in gold. Rowan sat beside the bed, elbows on his knees, as if he had no intention of leaving her side. She wanted to speak again. To thank him. To tell him she was terrified. To ask why he'd helped her at all. But exhaustion swallowed her before she could form the words. The last thing she saw was Rowan shifting the chair closer, his silhouette a solid, quiet safeguard against the darkness. For the first time in a very long time, she fell asleep without bracing for footsteps. She woke to the soft glow of morning bleeding through the single cabin window. Not sunlight, mountain light, pale and quiet, the kind that came after a storm. For a moment she didn't move, afraid that any shift would shatter the fragile warmth wrapped around her. The blanket smelled of pine and smoke, the pillow carried the faint scent of cedar. It was unfamiliar, but comforting in a way that almost scared her. Her fingers curled, testing their strength. They were stiff, sore, swollen, but warm. Her body remembered that warmth like an old friend returning after years apart. A low clatter broke the silence. She turned her head and saw Rowan near the stove, sleeves rolled up, stirring something in an iron pot. He moved with slow, steady purpose, like someone who had learned long ago that rushing only led to mistakes. Crackling firelight carved shadows along his jawline and picked out the scars on his forearms. He didn't notice she was awake at first. His attention was fixed on the pot, steam rising around him as he tasted, adjusted, stirred again. The kind of simple task a man does when he's used to living alone, and used to taking care of everything himself. She swallowed, the motion painful against her dry throat. You're cooking? He turned immediately, eyes catching hers. Relief flickered across his face, quick, subtle, but real. You're awake, he said. His voice was low, steady. Good. You scared me last night. I'm sorry, she murmured automatically. Rowan frowned. Don't apologize for almost freezing to death. That's on the storm, not on you. She shifted slightly under the blanket, wincing as her body protested. Rowan noticed and moved toward her with the same careful calm he had shown the night before. He brought a small wooden bowl, setting it on the table beside the bed. It's just broth, he said. Your stomach won't handle anything heavier yet. She nodded, fingers trembling as she reached for it. Rowan saw the effort and gently took the bowl back, lifting a spoon instead. Let me, he said quietly. She hesitated. Trust felt dangerous. But exhaustion won, and she allowed him to lift the spoon to her lips. The warmth spread through her chest like sunlight through frost. She closed her eyes, letting it settle inside her. Rowan waited until she swallowed before offering the next spoonful. "You were half frozen when I found you," he murmured. "Another hour out there and," he didn't finish. He didn't have to. She lowered her gaze. "I didn't think anyone lived up here." "I do," he said simply. "Why?" she whispered before she could stop herself. Rowan looked toward the window, expression shifting. "Some things are easier to forget when the world is quiet." She sensed the shadow behind his words, a grief he wasn't ready to name. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. Grief recognized grief. "Rowan," she touched her chest lightly, breath trembling. "You don't even know what I ran from." He didn't flinch. Didn't pry. Didn't demand. Instead, he rested the spoon in the bowl, folded his arms across his knees, and said, "When someone crawls through a storm instead of staying where they were, I don't need the details to know they had their reasons." Her eyes burned. Tears she didn't want, couldn't stop, gathered along her lashes. Rowan didn't move closer. He didn't touch her. He gave her something much rarer, space that felt safe. She exhaled shakily, voice breaking as she whispered, "They'll come looking for me." He met her gaze steadily, without fear. "Then they'll find the wrong cabin to walk into." A shiver ran through her, not of fear, but of something that felt dangerously like trust. For the first time in months, she felt the faintest spark of life return to her, small, flickering, but real. And it wasn't the broth or the fire or the morning light that warmed her. It was Rowan Hale, quiet, wounded, and impossibly steady, sitting beside her bed, refusing to let her disappear. The storm faded by noon, leaving the world outside buried under a clean, untouched sheet of white. But inside Rowan's cabin, the air remained warm, thick with the scent of pine smoke and something else she hadn't felt in a long time, safety. A fragile kind, but real. She tried sitting up again, slower this time. Rowan noticed immediately. "You shouldn't push yourself," he murmured. "I can't stay in this bed forever." "You barely survived the night," he said. "Give your body time to remember what warmth feels like." He wasn't wrong. Her fingers still tingled as blood returned to them. Her legs trembled even beneath the blankets. But lying still made her feel helpless, and helplessness felt too much like the life she ran from. "I need to stand," she whispered. Rowan looked at her for a long moment, measuring, assessing, silently arguing with himself, before finally nodding. He rose to his feet, offering his hand but not forcing it. She hesitated only a second before placing her cold fingers in his. His grip was firm, steady, grounding. As he helped her sit up, the blanket slipped slightly, revealing the bruises along her collarbone. Old ones. New ones. Some faded to yellow, some still dark. Rowan froze. His jaw tightened, not with judgment, but with something heavier. A quiet, simmering anger directed at no one in the cabin. He didn't ask. He didn't point. He simply lifted the blanket back over her shoulders with a gentleness that made her throat ache. "Let's get you to your feet," he said softly. Her legs wobbled the second they touched the floor. She gasped, gripping his forearm with both hands. Rowan didn't flinch. He didn't rush her. He didn't make a sound. He simply anchored her, letting her borrow his strength until she found her own. When she could breathe again, he guided her toward the window. The glass was cold beneath her fingertips as she looked out. The world was endless white. And empty. "No tracks," Rowan said quietly, reading her fear before she voiced it. "No one followed you up the ridge." She exhaled shakily, shoulders sagging with relief. "They always find me," she whispered. "Not here," Rowan replied, voice low and certain. "Not unless I let them. And I don't let trouble climb my mountain." She looked at him then, really looked. His broad shoulders, the carved lines of his face, the stillness he carried like a second skin. A man who lived alone not because he feared the world, but because the world had lost any claim on him. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. "You could have walked by." Rowan's gaze drifted to the storm outside. "I told myself I didn't care about people anymore." His voice cracked, not enough for most to notice, but enough for her to feel. "Then I saw someone in the snow who looked like they'd stopped believing in second chances." A tear slid down her cheek. She hadn't meant to cry, but the warmth and the quiet and the truth in his voice pulled it from her. Rowan didn't reach to wipe it away. He handed her a small piece of soft buckskin instead. "That's yours," he murmured. "Use it if you want. You don't owe me your tears." She pressed it to her eyes, breath trembling. For the first time in months, no one demanded she explain her bruises. No one accused her of being dramatic, hysterical, weak. Rowan offered her space, real, gentle space, to breathe. And in that silence, something inside her cracked open and spilled into the warm air. Not fear. Hope. Rowan stepped back just enough to give her balance, but not so far she felt alone. "Let's take this 1 hour at a time," he said. "You're safe here. And when you're ready, you can tell me what put you in that snow." She nodded. Not because she trusted easily, but because something about Rowan Hale felt carved from honesty itself. And for the first time in a long, long while, she wanted to believe a man's promise. The hours that followed unfolded slowly, like thawing ice cracking under the first touch of spring. Rowan kept the fire alive, adding logs with quiet precision, his movements steady and unhurried. Every now and then, he glanced at her, not in suspicion, not in pity, but as if making sure she was still anchored to this world. When he brought her a bowl of broth, steam curled into the air like a soft invitation. "Just a little," he murmured. "Your body needs something warm inside it." Her fingers trembled when she tried lifting the spoon. Rowan noticed, but instead of taking over, he simply slid a small wooden box toward her. "Rest your elbow there. Easier that way." It was such a small gesture. So ordinary. But her chest tightened at the idea of someone adjusting the world to fit her instead of demanding she bend to fit it. She managed half the bowl before exhaustion draped over her like a heavy blanket. Rowan took it from her hands, setting it aside. "You should rest," he said softly. "Your body's been through hell." She opened her mouth to argue, habit, reflex, the leftover fear of punishment for being inconvenient, but Rowan held up a hand. "Rest," he repeated. "Not because you owe me obedience. Because you deserve to heal." No one had ever said that to her. Not once. She sank back into the bed, the warmth seeping into muscles that had forgotten softness. Rowan moved about the cabin, his footsteps steady, predictable, comforting. She watched him from half-lidded eyes as he checked the windows, secured the latch on the door, and then pulled a heavy fur down from a high shelf. "You'll be warmer with this," he said, laying it gently across her. "Why are you doing all this?" she whispered. Rowan paused, his hand lingering on the fur for a beat too long. "Because the world's already given you enough reasons to believe nobody will show up for you," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time someone proved otherwise." Her breath shuddered. A soft sob escaped before she could stop it. Rowan didn't flinch. He didn't shush her. He didn't edge closer. He simply stayed where he was, giving her space to break without feeling watched. When she finally wiped her face, he nodded once, as if acknowledging a silent victory she had no words for. "You'll get stronger," he said. "When you're ready, we'll figure out the rest." "The rest?" she echoed, voice barely a whisper. Rowan sat in the chair beside the fire, his silhouette outlined by the glow. "Who hurt you?" he said simply. "And why they thought they could leave you out there to die?" Her pulse fluttered. The truth clawed at her throat, heavy and jagged. She wasn't ready, not yet. But Rowan didn't press. He leaned back in the chair, arms folded loosely, eyes half closed. "You don't have to tell me today," he murmured. "Or tomorrow. Or ever, if that's what you choose." She stared at him, stunned. Freedom. A choice. Something she hadn't been given in years. "Why are you being so kind?" she whispered. Rowan opened his eyes, meeting her gaze with a steady calm that felt older than the mountains themselves. "Because once," he said, "someone dragged me out of the dark when I thought my life was over. I don't forget debts like that." She swallowed hard. "You were like me?" she asked. Rowan's eyes darkened, memories flickering behind them like shadows on the cabin wall. "I was worse," he murmured. "But that's a story for another day." Outside, the wind howled fiercely against the cabin walls. Inside, a fragile peace settled between them, quiet, real, undeniable. And for the first time, she wondered if being lifted from the snow hadn't just saved her life, but changed the shape of her future. The next morning came slowly, gray light filtering through the frost-rimmed window, soft wind brushing against the cabin walls like a reminder that the world outside still waited. She woke to warmth, something she hadn't felt in so long that her body didn't quite know how to trust it. Rowan was already awake. He sat by the fire, sharpening a hunting knife with slow, methodical strokes. The steady scrape of steel on stone should have frightened her. Once, not long ago, it would have. But something in the rhythm, slow, controlled, calm, felt strangely like a heartbeat. Her heartbeat. He glanced up when she shifted. "Morning," he said, voice quiet but solid, like a rock in a storm. "Morning," she whispered back, surprised her voice worked. "You kept the blankets on all night," he added. "That's a good sign." A good sign. No one had ever looked for signs in her well-being before. She pushed herself upright, testing her limbs. The ache was still there, deep and bruised, but her body responded. Rowan watched, not hovering, just noticing. "I need to tell you something," she said abruptly. Rowan put the knife down instantly. Not slowly, not casually, instantly. His full focus landed on her like warmth from the fire. "You don't need to force anything," he reminded her. "I know," she said. "But if I don't say it, the fear wins." The cabin fell silent, the kind of silence that made honesty feel safer. She drew a breath. "My name is Mara," she began. "Not the one I told you yesterday. Mara Alden." Rowan nodded once, absorbing the name without a blink. "I wasn't running away from the storm," she continued. "I was running from people. Men." His jaw tightened, but he let her continue. "My brother married me off," she whispered, "to a man who believed breaking a woman was the same as loving her. I tried to leave twice. The second time, he made sure I wouldn't try again." She lifted her sleeve slightly, revealing the darker bruises beneath. Rowan's hands curled into fists, but his voice remained steady. "He did this." She nodded. "He wasn't going to let me go," she continued. "Not alive, at least. So I waited for the cold he thought would kill me slower than he could. I slipped out during the blizzard, hoping the snow would hide my tracks." Her breath shuddered. "I didn't care if I lived. I just didn't want to die by his hands." Rowan closed his eyes for a moment, a storm gathering behind his calm exterior, controlled, but dangerous. When he opened them again, they were steady. "Mara," he said softly, "no one who crawls into a storm to escape a man like that is weak. You didn't crawl into the snow to die. You crawled into the snow to choose your own way." Her breath caught. No one had ever reframed her pain as strength. He continued, voice low and unwavering. "And you're not alone anymore." For the first time since she'd met him, Rowan stood and walked toward her slowly, giving her time, giving her choice. He knelt beside the bed, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the heat of him. "You're safe here," he said. "I don't say that lightly." A tear slid down her cheek. Then another. Rowan didn't wipe them. He didn't rush her. He simply sat with her, letting her feel without fear. "Whoever he is," Rowan added quietly, "he won't reach you in these mountains. Not with me here." Something inside her loosened, a knot of fear she'd carried for far too long. For the first time since the day her life started breaking apart, she allowed herself to breathe. Rowan didn't ask for more details that morning. He didn't push, didn't pry, didn't dig into her wounds the way other men had dug into her silence. Instead, he stepped outside into the bitter mountain air and began chopping firewood, each strike clean, controlled, powerful. It wasn't anger. It was protection taking shape. Mara watched him through the frost-softened window, her breath fogging the glass. There was something grounding in the way he worked, like every swing of the axe was him clearing a path she didn't yet know she'd walk. By midday, she stepped outside for the first time since the storm. The cold bit her skin, but it didn't feel like a threat anymore. Rowan glanced over, pausing immediately. "You shouldn't be out in this long," he said gently. "I need to feel something that isn't fear," she whispered. He nodded once. Accepting. Understanding. They walked slowly along the edge of the clearing, Mara wrapped in a heavy coat Rowan had found in his storage chest. Snow crunched beneath their boots. Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but thick with things neither had said yet. Then Rowan stopped. "Mara, there's something you need to know." Her heart skittered. His tone wasn't cold, but it carried weight. "You're not the first person I've pulled from a storm," he said softly. Mara's breath froze midair. "My younger sister," he continued, "ran out into a blizzard to escape her husband. She didn't make it. By the time I found her," he swallowed, "she was already gone." Mara felt a sharp ache inside her chest. "Rowan." I didn't know. I'm not telling you for sympathy. His voice stayed steady, though the pain beneath it was years old. I'm telling you because the day I lost her, I swore something. He turned to her fully, eyes dark and unwavering. I swore that if the mountains ever brought me another woman running for her life. He paused, letting the vow settle in the cold air. I wouldn't fail her again. Mara's lips trembled. Rowan, you didn't fail your sister. His jaw flexed. I wasn't fast enough. She reached out, hesitant, unsure, and her fingers brushed his hand. The touch was feather-light, but Rowan froze like she'd laid a palm over his heart. Mara, he murmured, you don't have to. You saved me, she whispered. That's already more than anyone's ever done. His breath left him in a slow, controlled exhale. But before either of them could speak again, a sound drifted through the valley, a distant crunch of heavy boots on frozen ground. Rowan's entire body shifted. His posture changed. His silence sharpened. Someone was approaching. Mara's stomach dropped. Rowan, no one should be this far up the mountain. No one friendly, he corrected quietly. Another crunch. Closer this time. Then a man's voice, a voice Mara recognized even through the wind. Mara, you think you can hide from me? Her blood turned to ice. Rowan stepped in front of her instantly, blocking her with his entire frame, his voice low and lethal. Get inside. Rowan. Now, he repeated, tone calm but unarguable. She backed toward the cabin, heart pounding so hard she could taste metal. Rowan didn't look back. His full attention was fixed on the tree-line where shadows moved between pines. The man's voice came again, slurred, poisonous, full of the ownership she'd clawed her way into the snow to escape. Mara belongs to me. And I'm taking her home. Rowan didn't raise his voice. Didn't shout. Didn't waver. But his next words cracked like a rifle shot across the clearing. She belongs to no man. And you're not taking anything from this mountain. Not today. Not ever. Mara gripped the cabin doorframe, breath shaking, as the man who had almost killed her stepped into the clearing. And Rowan Brennan, the lone mountain man who had carried her out of death's reach, stepped forward to face him. The man who stepped into the clearing looked exactly as Mara remembered. Heavy boots, hunting coat, eyes full of a darkness that once kept her awake night after night. Elias Ward. Her husband. The reason she'd crawled into the snow to die. Only now, his swagger faltered when he saw Rowan standing between them, tall and unmoving as a pine rooted into stone. Well, Elias sneered, chin lifting. You've kept her warm for me, mountain man. I'll take her back now. Rowan didn't blink. Didn't shift. Didn't yield even a fraction of an inch. You're not taking her anywhere, he said quietly. Elias snorted and looked past Rowan, eyes locking onto Mara trembling near the cabin door. Mara, get over here. His tone was the same command he'd used for years. As if she were a dog, not a human being. Her breath stuttered. Rowan's voice, when it came, was a controlled blade. Don't speak to her like that. Elias laughed loudly, a wild, ugly sound that echoed against the snow-covered cliffs. You think you can tell me how to talk to my wife? Rowan stepped forward. Just one step, but the earth seemed to shift with it. She isn't your wife anymore, he said simply. She stopped being yours the moment you left her to die. Elias's smile twisted. She crawled out into a storm like a fool. Not my fault she doesn't have survival sense. Mara heard something inside Rowan crack. A sound no one else might have noticed. But she felt it in the air like a pressure drop before lightning. You beat her, Rowan said softly. You broke ribs. Bruised her throat. Dragged her by the hair. And when she couldn't walk, you threw her out like trash. Elias shrugged. Women need discipline. Mara's stomach heaved. Rowan's voice lowered further, dangerously gentle. I buried someone once because a man thought that way. Elias's eyes flickered. All this righteous talk, what are you really after? Her? A broken woman? You want what I had? Rowan's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to it. I want her safe, he said. That's all. Elias stepped closer, hand drifting toward the revolver holstered at his hip. Rowan didn't reach for his rifle. He didn't have to. His presence alone was more dangerous than any weapon. Walk away, Rowan said. This mountain has taken men stronger than you. The wind grew sharp, snow swirling between them like warning spirits. But Elias Ward had never been wise. He spat on the ground. She's mine. He moved for his gun. Rowan moved faster. Not violent. Not reckless. But decisive, controlled, trained from years surviving real danger. In one fluid motion, Rowan grabbed Elias's wrist, twisted, and snapped the revolver free. It landed in the snow several feet away. Elias howled, dropping to his knees. Rowan didn't strike him. Didn't choke him. Didn't become the kind of man Mara feared. He simply stood over him, shoulders rising and falling with steady breath. "You don't get to hurt her again," Rowan said. "Ever." Elias glared up at him, eyes burning with hatred, but also with fear. Real fear. "If you show your face on this mountain again," Rowan continued, "you'll be walking into your own grave. Not because I'll put you there." His voice dropped to a cold whisper. "But because this wilderness swallows cowards." Elias staggered to his feet, clutching his wrist. He looked at Mara once. That same poisonous glare. But she didn't flinch now. Not with Rowan between them. Not with her knees steady. Not with her heart learning how to rise again. "You'll regret this," Elias spat. Rowan didn't reply. He simply watched him disappear into the tree line, shrinking into the white silence of the storm-shadowed woods. When he was gone, Rowan finally turned toward Mara. Her knees buckled. But before she hit the snow, Rowan caught her, lifting her body with the same gentle strength he'd used the night he found her dying. "You're safe now," he murmured. Mara pressed her forehead to his chest, breathing him in, smoke, pine, winter wind, warmth. "Rowan," she whispered, "I thought I was done for. I thought he'd never stop haunting me." Rowan's arms tightened around her. "He won't haunt you anymore." Her voice broke. "You saved my life twice." Rowan lowered his head until his forehead rested against hers. "No, Mara," he said softly. "You saved your own life the night you crawled into the snow. I just happened to be there when you finally chose to live." A tear slipped down her cheek. Not from fear now, but from release. For the first time in years, she felt something fragile forming inside her. Hope. Rowan pulled her closer, his voice a quiet promise carried on the cold wind. "You're not alone anymore." And as the mountain wind howled across the clearing, Mara realized something. This was the moment she stopped being a woman running from death. And became a woman learning how to live again.